This is The Weekly Set, the official podcast of TVEnthusiast.com. With your host, Tyson Gifford and William Rowick. Episode 114, recorded June 29th, 2017. Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Weekly Set, the official podcast of TVEnthusiast.com. I am your host, the editor-in-chief of TV Enthusiast. My name is Tyson, and joining me today, as always, my partner in crime and the co-host on The Weekly Set, William Rowick.
Hello.
So, today we are mostly going to be talking about Twin Peaks, but we also watched Glow, a little bit of that, so we're gonna talk a bit about that, and we're gonna go over a few shows in rapid fire, but we're gonna kick things off by talking about the greatest upcoming show of all time. A new trailer has come out for a stunning piece of narrative fiction that, is going to go down in the Hall of Fame as the greatest visual entertainment ever. Inhumans has released a trailer.
God, this thing. More like Inhumas. I
think Inhuman fits it. Like, it's inhuman that they made this.
Yeah.
Inhumane.
I don't know how this exists. Like, I don't know where to start with this. This is it's pretty atrocious, people. If you don't know what the Inhumans are, it's a Marvel TV show. This is coming from Marvel Television. And previously it was scheduled to be a Marvel Cinematic Universe feature film, until those plans got canceled and it was revived as a TV show under the Marvel Television banner. And after viewing this trailer, I wish it wasn't. But the Inhumans are similar to the X-Men. They're mutated humans.
It's kind of a weirder X-Men.
It's like a weirder X-Men because they're like, in the comics, they're mutated humans because the Kree were doing experiments on humanity at the dawn of humanity and injecting people with their DNA or some shit. And that created like the Inhumans. And Inhumans are created, they're not created so much like Inhumans are born from a special mist called the Terrigen Mist, which interacts with that Kree DNA, basically waking it up and transforming the former human into an Inhuman. And traditionally becoming an Inhuman, it's not like being a mutant in the Marvel Universe. I mean, mutants actually have a pretty plum deal in the fact that they almost 90% of the time look totally normal. Inhumans, it's the opposite. Almost 90% of the time they look like horrific freaks. It's pretty bad. Only the very lucky few come out of the Terrigen Mist looking human.
If you watch Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., of course, you've seen a bunch of the Inhuman stuff that they've set up there.
Yeah, pretty much like the mythology surrounding it, but what you don't get from watching Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is that the
Inhuman Society, yeah.
The Inhuman Society, the most famous Inhumans, the ones that the comic books center around, are the royal family of the Inhumans, who are basically the leaders of the entire race. And they're the ones that
in their magical traveling city.
Yeah, their magical yeah. They live in a city on the moon. So they're not actually on Earth, from what I understand. And this is what this show specifically centers on, is the royal family of the Inhumans. So this is what people, if you've been following Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and following their Inhuman story, this is probably what you've been waiting for, for this, because these are the big guns of that mythology finally coming to the Marvel Universe, finally being explored. Only, I'm sorry, if you were expecting a payoff from anything happening on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., I'm sorry to say, it looks like they fucked this up royally.
Well, it's gonna not really even be related to Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which is part of the problem.
Yeah, that's so weird.
They should have just brought this in on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
They should. Why is this not related to Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. after all the freaking, that show did all the work to build up this mythology surrounding the Inhumans. They
could have done some crossovers and built it up as like a backdoor pilot and then launched it, and it would have been really interesting.
It would have been really interesting.
But instead, they brought the master on board to run this show.
Yeah, Scott Buck. Judging from this trailer, it's just bad. There's bad acting. It's got Rion. What's his name? Oh god, he played he was from Game of Thrones.
Bolton, yeah.
He played Ramsay Bolton, and he's in this, and of course he plays a villain in this too. But his performance seems like it's phoned in. He sounds bored reading his lines.
See, that's the thing is, I don't think it's necessarily that they have bad performers. It's like they have bad direction.
It's bad. Yeah, it's like if you watch Game of Thrones, you know how great he is, how he could be like this evil villain that makes you hate him. And here
he's played some good non-villain characters too. He was really good in Misfits.
It's a good actor, but he's not given a good performance here. And then, like the story is cliche. The action looks totally uninteresting. The main character, Black Bolt, basically the trailer shows, the king, Black Bolt, he's forced to flee to Earth, from his brother, who we were just talking about, Ramsay Bolton. That actor is actually Black Bolt's brother. And he forces Black Bolt to retreat to Earth. And then we get a scene of he shows up with his dog, and then we see cops just beating him with billy clubs. And this is a character that's supposed to be nigh invulnerable. He's supposed to be his first appearance in the comic books. He was fighting the Thing and going toe to toe with the Thing.
He's part of the Illuminati in the comic books, which includes I think what is it? It's Iron Man, him. He's a top tier.
Yeah, he's a top
alpha.
Tier. Cops shouldn't be able to just beat him down with billy clubs. Come on.
Yeah. It's just it's a little ridiculous. They're kind of presenting him as a little bit too ordinary. But it also falls into that trap that X-Men started that kind of was okay for its time when X-Men came out of well, how do we interpret superhero costumes? I know, put everything in black leather.
Yeah, but everybody's in black leather. It's stuff. There's this one character that is particularly atrocious. It's Black Bolt's wife, Medusa. And in the comics, she's cool.
With a really obvious wig.
Yeah, her thing. In the comics, her thing is she's called Medusa because her hair. She has this wild hair that she can control, and it goes all over the place. And it looks really cool from a visual standpoint. If you look at any comic book stills of her hair is just going in every which way direction. It looks completely dynamic and fantastic. There's 0 shots of her in this trailer where her hair is doing anything. It's just sitting there on her head, straight down. Nothing's happening with that hair.
Worse than that, it's a very obvious and bad wig.
And it's a very obvious and bad wig.
You can see the hairline on the wig, and it's straight across.
It looks bad.
Yeah, it just does not look real. It looks really
visually,
stupid.
This show looks like the Roger Corman 90s Fantastic Four movie that he crapped out. This looks like that. Visually, it's what especially her, it's what that reminds me of.
They did an okay job, not great, but okay for TV budget for the giant CG dog.
Yeah.
But even that, when they focus on him too much, which they have a whole shot at the very end of the trailer of him, and it's you don't want to focus on it too much if the CG isn't perfect, because then you really notice the imperfections. And so you see him initially, and he teleports, so it's you see him and then you don't see him, and your focus is on a different character anyway, so you're it works in that sense. Then you have a close-up on him, rolling around and playing, and then he looks unnatural. He doesn't look real.
So you know how I complained about Iron Fist and how I felt it was too boring? I felt that same sense of boredom watching this trailer. Even though stuff was happening, it still came off as this is extremely boring in the same way Iron Fist.
Wait a minute, what do those two have in common?
Yeah, right.
So for those who don't know, both of those shows were created and run by Scott Buck, whose other claim to fame before that was the last couple seasons of Dexter, which are equally atrocious.
Yeah.
And ill-regarded. So for some reason, Marvel TV said, this is the man.
This is the guy.
Look at the amazing stuff he's doing here on Iron Fist. We need him to ruin Inhumans too. I don't know why they went to him for Inhumans. I don't know what happened behind the scenes. I don't know what blackmail material Scott Buck has on Jeff Kanata. I don't know.
And what baffles me is that they're gonna have some huge marketing push for this. They're putting the first 2 hours of it on an IMAX screen. And I think, in looking at this trailer, I think now doing that, they're gonna air that September 1st, like weeks before it airs on TV. And I think doing that, they're just gonna kill this show right out the gate. You put that on IMAX.
They filmed
screen.
the whole thing on IMAX.
Yeah, on IMAX.
So they're airing the first 2 episodes, but they filmed the whole show on IMAX cameras. And it's like, God, what if you had done that for Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., It's like...
Yeah, something like... So this is going to be on an IMAX screen, and I don't understand why they want to do that to this.
There's a weird ebb and flow with Marvel TV. Because, or comic book TV in general, I should say. Because Arrow came out, and it was amazing. Mm-hmm. And Season 2 was just blowing us all away. We're like, oh man, this is so great. And while Season 2 was going, Marvel launched Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And we're like, oh man, Marvel, look at the MCU. They're gonna really kill it. And this is supposed to tie in with all stuff in the MCU. This is gonna be amazing. And it was not that great. The pilot for Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was not great at all. It was kind of cheesy and bad.
I watched that, and that made me decide I was done with that show. But it wasn't like,
But then Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. halfway through the first season started getting better.
Mm-hmm.
And then Season 2 kicked off, and Season 2 was great from the get-go. And when Season 2 was airing of that, all of a sudden Arrow turned to shit.
Yeah, all of a sudden Arrow, took a turn. I want to say in defense of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., because it's easy to say, well, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. started off poor and got better. I will counter that with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was poor, but it had all the ingredients there, even from the first episode, for a good show. All they had to do was flesh out the characters more, make them more interesting, and also come up with a better plot, better storyline than what they had. And
we've talked before about that it's like they were treading water because they were waiting for that big Winter Soldier moment.
Yeah, they were waiting for that big Winter Soldier moment. Yeah, once Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. nailed down the characters and they got a better plot running, that was it. It took off. It just needed some slight adjustments.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know with this going with this trailer. It looks like it's going to need a lot more.
I don't think this is going to ever get better.
Yeah,
I don't think Inhumans is going to improve. But what I was going to say though is that Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. started improving, Arrow went to shit. Then CW became all spin-off happy, and Flash is fun, but it's mind-numbingly dumb.
Yeah, it is mind-numbingly dumb.
Then Legends of Tomorrow came out, very stupid.
Yeah, they just got stupider and stupider, and they keep spinning it off. I would have been happy with Arrow and Flash, especially since they're kind of two diametrically different types of shows.
Mm-hmm.
And I would have been happy with just those two shows, fix Arrow to be more like the first 2 seasons, and fix Flash to be smarter. And you got, again, it's not like I think Flash is a terrible show. It just gets stupid, and
it's fun. It's a fun show.
It's a fun show. If they adjusted it to just be a bit smarter, it would be a great show.
Yeah, and it's bad whenever they try to make Barry brooding.
Yeah,
it's like, no, that's not Barry.
No, that's not Barry. That's Oliver. We don't want our fun zippy hero to be some brute. Come on.
But anyways, where I was going with that is that as the Arrowverse declined, Marvel was flourishing because we had Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was suddenly really good. Unfortunately, not a lot of people were watching it because they were let down by the first couple episodes. But people who were watching were like, oh shit, this has gotten really good. Meanwhile, they did the Netflix shows.
Daredevil
Daredevil is
killed
amazing.
it.
Jessica Jones, I think, was even better. Because it had a more personal story for me, so I like that even more.
Right.
And now, you kind of have, it's kind of like, maybe it's turning, I guess, because Luke Cage wasn't great. It was just shy of great, but it wasn't nearly as good as Daredevil or Jessica Jones were.
Right.
Iron Fist, not great at all.
Great at all, no.
And now you have Inhumans coming up, and it's not looking great.
Right. And then we have some other shows coming up, which...
there's like 3 or 4 more, like, Marvel shows coming up, you know?
Yeah. And it's at the point where I kind of I made a personal decision that I am done with Marvel TV, you know, with the exception of more Daredevil or more Jessica Jones, or, you know, basically I'm not going to watch all of it. I'm going to take it on a case-by-case basis, you know, based on what personally gets me excited. And right now, this certainly isn't doing it for me. So, you know, I mean, I'm probably not going to, unless, you know, Inhumans, like, comes out and it's unexpectedly great, like, it completely defies what this trailer portrays. You know, like, unless something shocking happens, probably not going to watch this.
Well, the good thing is that we should be hearing about that because it's going to be coming to IMAX first. So I'm not going to go see it in IMAX.
Oh, no. Pay to see that? Are you crazy?
No. But we should start getting impressions of people who do, you know, weeks before the actual show debuts. So at least we have a little bit of a buffer time to kind of know what to expect. But yeah, it's not looking good. It's looking really tired, really cliched, really dull. Yeah. Kind of everything Inhumans shouldn't be.
I mean, when your best actor, who just turned in an amazing performance as a major villain
on the biggest show in the world,
on the biggest show on television, you know, when you got him and he sounds bored, like he doesn't want to be there, that's bad.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
We'll have to see. I think they filmed a lot in Hawaii. I'm wondering if the actors just signed on because they wanted to be in Hawaii.
Yeah, I think so.
It's like basically they got a vacation.
If you actually watch the trailer, I think you know, some of the locations they use were same locations they used for Lost as well. If you're a Lost watcher, you can definitely recognize some of those locations in Hawaii, because that's also where they filmed Lost. Yeah.
So I honestly, like, part of me just thinks that they people signed on because it was a free trip to Hawaii.
You know what? Yeah, probably. They're like, fuck yeah. I mean, that's apparently that's the reason Adam Sandler makes all these terrible movies, because they're free vacations for him to go somewhere. Like, so he'll write some dumbass shit and then purposefully set it in Hawaii so we could just go to Hawaii.
Yeah, which is sad for us viewers.
Yes, it is. Yeah, really.
So I'm going to move us away from Inhumans depression, and I'm going to go a little rapid fire over some shows I've been watching. I had a much larger list, but I kind of pruned it down because I know some of them I've already talked about in the past couple weeks, and I don't really have too terribly much to add. But I just want to go over a few. So first off, Dark Matter is back on SyFy. Very fun, good space show with, you know, a cast of lovable rogues. They just did a Groundhog's Day episode. That's like my favorite episode type, or trope, I should say. So
yes,
that was fun.
They're fun when they're done right.
Yeah, so that was pretty fun. That their little Dark Matter Groundhog's Day episode. But yeah, I mean, I don't have too terribly much to say. If you liked it before, you'll like it.
Supernatural had a really good one. Yeah.
Xena had a good one. Eureka had a good one. Stargate did. Stargate SG-1 had a good Groundhog's Day episode.
Nice.
A lot of them, it's a pretty fun episode type. But, besides that, I've been watching Wrecked, which, we'll watch the first episode of. It's on its second season now. I wasn't into it.
Lost parody that was like, yeah, that was terrible.
I actually like it. I like it for what it is. I know what it is. Like, it's not something I'm gonna go like, this is a great show.
Humor. Yeah, right.
I'm not gonna say like, this is is a great show, but there's like fun stuff in it that's just kind of
maybe
like
because
funny.
like it just came off as like too dumb for me. Like like the humor like resembled the humor in like one of those freaking movies. What is it like scary, Scary Movie or something?
Maybe like Scary Movie, but not like those other really, really bad, like Epic Movie or like other ones that are
that's
really
what I was
bad.
thinking, like Epic Movie, yeah, because like I
It's
actually
not
liked
that. It's not even
the
close
Scary
to
Movie
that bad. It's not even
Okay.
close to that bad. Come on. It's to me, the show feels like a really long Saturday Night Live or Mad TV sketch.
Right. Okay,
That's kind of what it feels like. So I understand like some people wouldn't dig it because a lot of it's just kind of like the really stupid banter between characters and stuff.
Right.
It's like, oh, like here's a situation that we've seen on shows like Lost before, and here's some really stupid bickering characters, how they would react if they were in that situation. And I thought that was actually kind of, it was kind of funny for me. It's not like I think it's a great show, but it's funny. This last episode I watched of Wrecked, I wanted to bring up because the majority of the episode was, well, they're on this island now and pirates have come to the island. Like not like Jack Sparrow type pirates, but like, like real, like Somalian style pirates, And, so there's these pirates on the island because one of the guys on the island, the people that the main characters is like super rich, which of course is like a takeoff of like kind of Hurley on Lost.
right.
And they want to like, kidnap him or use him for ransom to get money. But like the plans don't really go right. So now the pirates are just kind of like on the island with them, except they're kind of like subjugating them. And, the whole point of this one episode was that two of the pirates were talking to them and saying like how, that they must want to get back and watch TV. And everyone started talking about how they watch Game of Thrones. And they said like, oh, you guys don't even know what happened last season, do you? And then it became like this big debate on whether, that the two pirates should spoil Game of Thrones for them or if they should wait for the possibility of getting off the island and watching it for themselves. And so they had like a vote on it and they were doing this whole thing. Eventually it came down that they were going to get it spoiled for them and they went into this long, elaborate scene where it was just music and basically slow motion footage of the two pirates like acting out the scenes. And they're basically acting out the entire events of the last season of Game of Thrones with these two pirates. With just like music in the background and slow motion footage of them acting it out. It was really funny. As a fan of Game of Thrones, it was like I'm picking out stuff like, oh, they're doing this scene and oh, they're doing, so I actually thought it was pretty funny. And so that's all I really had to say about Wrecked.
So should I give it a second chance?
If you didn't like it before, you're probably not going to like it now.
Okay, so it did nothing happened to where
it still feels like a long Saturday Night Live sketch.
Okay.
And if you're not going to like that, then you're not going to like,
Right.
I mean, you could if you feel like watching something of that type. Like if you're just like in the mood for that kind of thing, you might want to give it another shot because that might fill that niche for you. But if you're not, then it's not going to change your mind. Another show that came back for its second season, though, that actually is a very good show is Preacher. And what's exciting about this season of Preacher is that whereas in the first season it kind of all takes place in this one town where he's like a small-time preacher, and like in the comic books he's like on the road the whole time. It's like a road show. It's like a road trip show kind of, with the characters traveling around basically looking for God. And in the second season they hit the road. Like the first season ends with them hitting the road, and so the second season is all them on the road looking for God, hunting down clues. But somebody's hunting them. It's this cowboy from hell called the Saint of All Killers.
Right.
He's brutal. He's like a Terminator, basically. He just walks slowly and guns down everything in his way without a care about anything. He's shooting like a 6-shooter, but it's firing like a 50 caliber, like, rifle. Like, he shoots someone in the head and half their head flies off, you know? So he's like just leaving this, like, every time they kind of get somewhere and they like stay for a night or something, like he's showing up and they're having to like run away, and just like you're just seeing the collateral damage left behind because they were there, and it's just a trail of bodies as this guy's hunting them down. It's still a really fun show in the way it was in the first season, in that, you know, it's got a lot of action, but it's also got kind of an absurdity to it, and it's just a fun show to watch. It's fun, comic booky, pulpy kind of show. So that's Preacher. They did 2 episodes last week.
They sound like they did the source material justice with this so far. I don't know. Have you read Preacher?
I haven't, but I have a lot of friends that have. So I've been hearing stories of Preacher for decades.
Okay. So basically, based on what you've heard or what your friends say, like how faithful is this adaptation?
Well, some people were complaining about the first season because he wasn't on the road, because it was like a prequel almost.
Because basically most of the action in the comic happens on the road.
Yeah, and this was like all kind of him in the same town trying to be a preacher, whereas like in the comic book he's like on the road and he's still dressed like a preacher, but he's questioning his beliefs and he's not trying to actually preach to anybody, you know? Whereas like in the first season he's actually like leading a congregation and, you know, trying to be this, like he has this dark past, but he's trying to be like this preacher now, and it's kind of about what sets him up to be the character that we see in the comics. So that's kind of what the first season was. So some people had complaints about that, but I think most of them ended up liking the show anyways, just because it got a lot of the tonal stuff from the comics, like right, and it seems to be doing that again in the second season. From people I've talked to, they seem to really like the second season. I think it's much closer to the comics, and it still has that like absurdity and stuff, so it's still like really fun. Yeah, I mean, it's a good show, great chemistry between the actors. Yeah, fun, ridiculous, way over the top. If that's what you want. If you want to watch, you know, a bunch of police officers get blown away by a cowboy shooting from like miles down the road and blowing off their heads and stuff, and then like, you know, them trying to leave, but they don't have any gas in their car, so one of them sees the exposed intestine of one of the dead cops and uses it to siphon fuel into her car.
Right.
That's what you're gonna get in Preacher.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, you're gonna get just kind of weird, gory, action-heavy, perverse kind of comedy. That's what you're gonna get in Preacher. So if you're not into that, you're not gonna like it. That's all there is to it. It's not for you, if that's the case. But I'm really enjoying it. So you've been watching something too. You've been watching a show on HBO, on HBO Now.
Yeah, I've been watching Crashing. It actually premiered, I want to say it premiered it back in February of this year. But I just now got around to watching that. And it's sort of a dramedy. It's sort of an almost autobiographical dramedy about a comedian named Pete Holmes, who also wrote and executive produced the series. The series is also
Is his character have the same name? Like, is it like Seinfeld in that way, where the character
it's
has
like
the same name?
It's like the Seinfeld that way, yeah. His name is Pete Holmes in the show.
In the show, yeah.
And it's also produced and directed by Judd Apatow.
Okay.
So, you know, it's got, and so basically he's a struggling comedian, and the series starts when he finds out that his wife has been unfaithful to him. And unfortunately for him, that means he is now homeless, because he has been he's been going out there and performing stand-up, practicing stand-up, and not getting paid for it, you know, for a while. And you know, and apparently his wife got fed up with him, you know, and just went and cheated on him, and she dumps him. And that's where the series starts. So he's suddenly homeless, and he ends up crashing at other comedians' places, which is where the title of the show comes from. And it's kind of, it's kind of like this dramedy comedy about this sad sack wannabe comedian. It's crazy because he's also like a Christian, like he's a Baptist Christian, you know, and he has like this goofy naivete, and no matter what happens, he's always positive. He always has this big goofy smile on his face, and his demeanor kind of clashes with the world around him because, you know, he gets surrounded by these cynical, you know, kind of these cynical kind of like sour people, and he clashes with that like greatly because he's always like he's like almost always like sunshine.
He's all sunshine, rainbow, and lollipops, and they're all like, the world is rigged, and we're all gonna die.
And we're all gonna die. Yeah, exactly. And basically, without giving anything, the series follows him struggling to continue on his path to becoming a successful comedian, while also just inadvertently pissing off everybody around him and getting into like these situations. In the first episode, he gets mugged. And it's a comedy like that. It's like a situational comedy in that way.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, there's not much else to it. They're 30-minute episodes. There's like 8 of them. A lot of the focus is on the relationship between Pete Holmes and his ex-wife. She shows up frequently, as well as the man that she's dating now. Like they show up frequently throughout the series, so it's not like she goes away after the first episode. She's an important character too. And yeah, it's great. I loved it.
And we were talking before we started recording the podcast that it's good to find like these little short kind of fun to watch comedies, especially during summer because everything else is just all dour.
Right.
and it gets exhausting and you can't just watch nothing but, you know, these really dour dramas.
This show, like you talk about that, this show takes something that could easily be dour about a struggling comedian who can't get ahead and the world seems to constantly shit on him, and that should be dour. But instead of it, like our hero, our protagonist doesn't get depressed. He doesn't like get put off. He just like trudges forward with like the biggest stupid smile on his face and like this positive attitude. And it keeps the show from being depressing. You know, they really take like a different tact with this show. And again, it is very refreshing in that way, because you know, it does make it a fun, breezy watch, and it is, because it's like it's only 8 episodes, and the episodes are only 30 minutes each, you know, so it's not like it's going to take you a long time to get through the series.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can easily watch the whole thing within a week, you know, or
Probably watch the whole thing in a sitting.
Yeah, like I would say less based on how much you feel like binging.
So speaking of light and breezy shows that help take the load off of the heavy dour material we also watch, Glow hit Netflix just recently, and that's kind of a nice, fun, short show as well.
Again,
where it's
just
just
the same thing.
episodes.
Yeah, and it's nice because Glow came out while I was in the process of watching Crashing, and I was interested in that based off the trailer and the fact that, like, I am a fan of Alison Brie. I think she's very talented. She was you know, she was great in Community. So I was interested in this, and so I went from watching Crashing to watching this, and you know, it gave me the same sort of vibes. You know, the same feeling of, you know, this is a nice breezy 30-minute slice of comedy, you know, or dramedy, you know, like in the same vein, and you know, it watching these two shows side by side got me thinking, you know, I really do appreciate that there's these shorter, more breezy, easier to digest shows out there.
Yeah, Crashing is a show you watched that came out during winter,
yeah.
But Glow came out now. Netflix seems to be the only only service or channel or anything that's releasing stuff that's light and breezy during summer, you know? Like, so they released Glow. They recently did Kimmy Schmidt, which, by the way, we're going to be talking about next week because Twin Peaks isn't going to be on.
They released Kimmy Schmidt. I watched that. I finished Kimmy Schmidt. Obviously, I'm a fan of that show. I've been a fan of Kimmy Schmidt since it first premiered 2 years ago. And again, that was like another 30-minute comedy that's just easy to sit down and watch, and it provides you a lot of laughs, and it's got great characters, great positivity. It certainly does fit that mold. And, you know, I appreciate that we're getting more and more of these shows, as opposed to, like, dense one-hour dramas. I mean, not that there's anything wrong with that, but if you go straight from Twin Peaks to something like Glow, you know, like the difference is, like, stark, because Twin Peaks is, like, so dense. So, you know, there's a lot happening in that hour, and it's so dense, and there's a lot to take in with that show versus something like Glow, where, you know, you don't have to pay attention so much. The plot isn't overly complicated. They're not trying to, you know, there's no hidden meaning to anything in Glow, as far as I'm aware. So, you know, so it's a lot easier to digest. And again, that's not a value judgment on Glow versus Twin Peaks or anything. That's because
you need balance.
You need balance.
You can't just have the one, you know? If you have the one, it's exhausting. You know, like, those are the shows that I always remember as being the ones that I love the most, you know? Game of Thrones, Battlestar Galactica, Lost, shows like that, you know? But they're heavy, and you get to a certain point, and it's like, God, I just need something that's light and fun and quick. You know, it's just going to be over in a half hour. It's going to be like a palate cleanse. And a show like Glow fills that role, as does like a show like Kimmy Schmidt, and it sounds like Crashing as well.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, I recommend it. I mean...
You've seen 7 episodes now, right?
Of Glow, yes. Glow. And, you know...
It's, out of 13, I've seen 5.
I think it's great.
We're not going to go too much into spoilers or anything.
Alison Brie is fantastic, of course. Like, I expected that. You know, Alison Brie is fantastic. What's the woman's name who plays her nemesis now? Debbie. I forget.
Betty Gilpin. Plays Debbie Egan.
She is great in this as well. She is fantastic. Especially
she was in American Gods in like 2 episode season.
I won't spoil anything, but especially in the latest episode of Glow, where we finally see her in her character, in her in-show character, and the way she plays that up and everything, it's fantastic. It's a fantastic performance. She's great in this. One thing that Tyson pointed out to me was she was also in American Gods, and in both shows she plays a woman whose best friend cheated with her husband behind her back. I thought that's a huge coincidence. Like that, that's like definitely very specific. You know,
she just has the woman's scorned face.
For that to happen to this woman in 2 different shows.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're like back-to-back shows too, yeah.
Back-to-back shows too. She gonna be like Sean Bean, except for like being cheated on.
Sean Bean dies and everything, yeah. She's just gonna be cheated on and everything.
Yeah.
Mark Maron is in this as well.
Mark Maron's fantastic. I love him in this.
It's kind of like a semi-chauvinistic, a lovable chauvinist.
It's like, I love, this is another thing too, because this is, I gotta give props to this, but this is a female-centric show. It's about girl power, and it's about, you know, empowered women, and that's great, but it also doesn't sit there and just demonize men, like, to an absurd degree. Mm-hmm. Like you'll get that in some more female-centric shows where, like, the men are all pigs and they're all evil except for, like, maybe whoever happens to be the love interest. You know, like, that's the exception. But no, this plays fair. This does fair by its Mark Maron's character could easily been portrayed as, like, some horrible chauvinist pig who's just terrible, but
instead he's a lovable chauvinist.
Yeah, it's well, I mean, he's a human being is basically what it is. So like, you know, he doesn't get up in the morning and just say I hate women or I'm just gonna be sexist today. He's flawed in that he does act sexist, but you can tell from his character that he doesn't hate women. He's not out to hurt people or to be like, you know, he is a very genuine person with his feelings and stuff. He's just very cynical. He's probably hard to get along with, but he's portrayed as a genuine person, and not necessarily a bad person, you know.
Yeah.
He's just flawed. Yeah. So I appreciate that. That's great. That's excellent characterization because, you know, it's like the opposite where you get like, I hate to harp like on Agent Carter. Agent Carter kind of just like cartoonishly portrayed the men around her as being like awful sexists, you know, instead of mostly being like human beings.
Fargo had a little bit of that this season too.
Yeah.
Like there was a lot of like men in authoritative positions kind of like not really paying attention to women and stuff and like not, you know, and the women kind of being the smarter ones of the group. There's a little bit of that in Fargo, except they played it kind of in I don't know, it was kind of fun to watch still.
Right.
So, but it had a bit of that. So,
it had a bit of that. Yeah, it had a bit of that. And
yeah.
so I appreciate that this show avoids that trope, you know, and I appreciate, I think that's a product of the show, of the showrunners, show creators being more interested in, you know, having a genuine people or exploring genuine characters rather than, you know, having stereotypes or having caricatures on the screen, because so far I don't feel like anybody on the main cast comes across as a caricature or a stereotype. You know, everybody they focus on.
There's a little bit of that.
There's a little bit of that, but mostly, for the most part, everybody feels like
because they're supposed
real.
to be wrestlers.
Well, I mean, there's a little bit of that comes in with the wrestling, the wrestling aspect. I mean, that's very obviously, you know, for the show itself treats its characters as real people, you know. I mean, and there is like these kind of, you know, tongue-in-cheek shout-outs when, you know, they're developing their wrestling personas, you know, and like the Indian girl, you know, they cast her as this terrorist, and she's like, you know, her reaction is like, hey, what? You know?
I'm from India.
Yeah, it's like, you know, so it calls attention to that stuff in like this fun, like snide way.
Yeah, definitely. It's for those who don't know, because we've been talking about the show but not really talking about the show. The show comes from Genji Kohan, who is the creator of Weeds and Orange is the New Black. It is a show about wrestling. It's about the real life wrestling organization called Glow that was around in the 1980s. Gorgeous Ladies of Wrestling. It was a women's wrestling thing. It was on Saturday mornings. This was like in the heyday of like the superhero version of like the WWF, you know, when it was like not the Attitude Era, but back when like the characters were supposed to be like superheroes and supervillains and stuff. And you had Hulk Hogan tearing his shirt off and he'd face off against, you know, the Iron Sheik who hated America. And it was very like stereotypical, very like a comic book come to life or something of that era, you know?
Right.
And, so Glow was a real wrestling organization in the 80s that was kind of like, okay, well, we're going to do the same kind of thing you do with wrestling, but we're going to have females and we're going to have these women wrestling each other. And, you know, it didn't last like, you know, the WWF did.
And no, it lasted. I think it was canceled in 1991. It lasted from my research, it went from like 1986 to 1991. And it did get a fair bit of publicity at the time. All the major talk shows featured the Glow wrestlers at one point or another. You know, it was heavily promoted. I don't know exactly how popular it was. I don't remember personally being aware of it at the time. But then, like, I was never interested in wrestling to begin with, so I certainly admittedly, if I wasn't interested in the WWF at the time, I certainly would not be interested in anything involving lady wrestlers, and it probably aired after my bedtime anyway.
I think it was on Saturday mornings, actually.
Oh, it was on Saturday mornings, right?
It was like you'd watch cartoons and you'd watch Glow.
I was probably just watching normal cartoons. I literally don't remember this. This ever hearing about this back when I was actually, back when it was actually airing.
I watched it a little bit. Like I'm well aware of it, and like I can remember some of the wrestlers, like not by name, but I can like picture them in my head, So like when I watch the show, I'm like, oh yeah, that's kind of like that one that was on Glow, But it doesn't go much beyond that, Like I kind of just have vague recollection of Glow. I mostly watch WWF,
right,
and cartoons, but yeah, I vaguely remember Glow. Like I know enough to like I can picture the logo and all the wrestlers, in my head, but not by name or anything.
So I looked up. This show is actually a fictionalized account of the Glow.
Yeah.
None of the characters seem to be loosely based off of the actual wrestlers, but the characters we're following in the show aren't the people who are actually involved with the real Glow in real life. This isn't like autobiographical or anything.
Yeah, which is a good thing. I don't think that would be this kind of show if that was the case.
Right, it wouldn't be this kind of show if that was the case. If they had to like strictly adhere to what happened, instead they're loosely based off of like the fighters from the actual
just
thing.
The organization in general.
Like from the organization in general. Like I could go down the list of people who were actually involved in their code names, and I could draw parallels, like vague parallels. But again, so if you're looking for historical accuracy or something, or seeing you're not getting these are for all intents and purposes completely original characters.
It was a real organization, but the story is fiction.
The story is fiction. Yeah,
the characters in it are fictional, so it's just kind of like basically looking at the idea of this organization and like what it meant in the 80s. And so of course you're going to have a lot of like kind of 80s nostalgia. The opening is like, worships at the foot of neon, kind of like the American Gods opening, where it's just neon everything. Yeah, it's very 80s, and if you grew up in the 80s, you're going to catch a lot of nostalgia off of that. Yeah. If you do kind of vaguely remember Glow like I do, you're going to get, a lot from that. If you were like seriously into Glow and you knew all the wrestlers by name and stuff, this might just be a little weird for you, because it's like, it'd be like if they made a show called WWF and there was like, but instead of Hulk Hogan, you had like some other guy.
Yeah.
You're like, wait a minute, that's not right. It's fictional. So like these characters are fictional, but it's based on like an actual organization.
Yeah.
But yeah, Will has watched 7 episodes. I've watched 5. We're not going to actively talk about it on the podcast just because we're going to be watching it kind of in different schedules. I'm going to be watching it a lot slower than Will is.
I'm going to be done with it by the time the next podcast rolls around. I'll
still be at episode
7.
5.
There's only 10 episodes and they're 30 minutes each. Again, it's a quick breezy watch. You can probably binge this in an afternoon,
Yeah, it's fun. I watched the 5 episodes I watched pretty much back to back. But I'm probably not going to be watching it again for a couple of weeks just because of my schedule and the way it just happens to line up. I'm not gonna watch it for a while. But so we're not going to be talking about it like week to week, like, oh, on this episode of Glow, we're not going to be doing that. But we are going to be talking about Kimmy Schmidt next week, as I had mentioned earlier, because the next show we're talking about, Twin Peaks, is not going to be on next week because of 4th of July weekend. But that brings us to Twin Peaks.
Oh, boy. And this was a doozy of an episode, wasn't it?
So here's the thing about this episode of Twin Peaks. Some people loved it. Some people hated it. Where did you fall into that mix?
I was leaning towards hating it, but I was leaning towards hating it myself. But like I read the reactions to it online, and they were mostly positive, mostly from people just praising David Lynch as this amazing genius auteur, and this was proof of his stunning genius right here.
So did that curb your position, or did it like double?
I read an article. I think Variety or somebody wrote an article about Twin Peaks episode 8. And it kind of explains some things for me. And now I sort of have a better understanding about the episode, because the episode is really about the birth of Bob.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it's about. It's about the birth and creation of Bob. And also, I guess Laura Palmer was created as a force for good to counter Bob.
Yeah, it's like the Man in Black and Jacob or something.
Yeah, the Man in Black and Jacob. At least that's what I got out of it from the Golden Sphere with Laura Palmer's face in it, created by the giant in the White Lodge.
There's a lot that can be read into it. There's a lot that's left up to interpretation, and there's a lot that's just like 5 minutes of footage of an old building in black and white.
We go back in time to 1945, and we see an atom bomb explosion, and we go from there. We see the demon from the beginning of the season, the demon that killed those two kids that came out of the box,
Mm-hmm.
And we see this demon, and it's puking up a bunch of shit, and in the middle, like, the shit that's puking up is like a black sphere that has Bob's face in it. And so that's where the whole idea that this was the birth of Bob came from. Also,
we should start further back, because before this crazy experimental side of the story kicked in, we actually had like 10 minutes of kind of a regular episode.
Yeah, we had a regular episode. Yeah, we continue off from last episode where Evil Cooper escaped from prison.
And George, yeah. They're escaping prison.
They're escaping prison, and basically...
Or Ray, not George. George is the actor, sorry.
Right, yeah. And basically it's Ray, they're basically Ray's basically like plotting to double cross Evil Cooper, and Evil Cooper knows this. He gets Ray into what he believes to be a vulnerable position, gets out his gun, goes to kill Ray. Ray was expecting it. He pulls out his own gun, and he seemingly kills Evil Cooper. And then this is where the first weirdness of the episode occurs, because after Cooper is shot down, the charcoal ghosts, appear.
They're listed in the credits as woodsmen.
Oh, they're called woodsmen. Okay.
Yeah.
So the woodsmen...
As they come out of the woods.
Gotcha, okay. So let's just call them woodsmen. So the woodsmen appear, and they apparently... I don't know what the fuck they're doing. But apparently...
They seem to be, smearing Evil Cooper with his blood.
Yeah, smearing him with his blood, and then they pull out what appears to be Bob. They remove Bob from Evil Cooper.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently.
I think they put it back in. I'm not sure.
I don't know. I don't think they did.
I'd have to rewatch the scene. But yeah, there's like a sphere-like thing, like what we saw being thrown up that we'd mentioned earlier.
With Bob's
by the
face
demon thing.
Being removed from Evil Cooper. And then we see Ray. He takes off, and he's on the phone. And he's on the phone. Apparently, he's on the phone with David Bowie's character from Firewalk with Me.
Yeah, there's some speculation about that because of the first name of the character.
Yeah, Philip. Who was also he was also directly referred to earlier in the season as well as being an FBI agent.
Mm-hmm. There is another Philip though, because the one-armed man is also named Philip.
Okay. Well, according to Vanity Fair seems to think it's David Bowie's character that Ray's talking to.
Yeah.
And basically,
the
theory
speculation
goes,
is that Ray might be like an undercover agent or something as well.
Well, the speculation here is that also Philip, like Cooper, was compromised by exposure to evil lodge spirits, and that this is an evil doppelganger of Philip, and that maybe he's trying to take custody of Bob from Evil Cooper.
Yeah, there's theories that can be drawn.
So that's one theory about it.
We go from that scene to a full song performance by Nine Inch Nails.
Yeah, for no reason.
Man, the Roadhouse is booking some.
I know.
Roadhouse can book Nine Inch Nails.
Like, wow, how the hell did the Roadhouse get them? I don't know what this.
That's a really cool performance. A really cool song.
It was really cool song. Really cool performance. I don't know what it had to do with anything, but I guess it exists because, damn it, David Lynch just wanted Nine Inch Nails to sing a song in his show. So fuck it.
So here's the theory I've heard on that.
Yeah.
The theory I've heard on that is that most of the episodes end with the band performing.
Sure.
So that's like the end of the episode, and everything else is just like post-credit sequence or something.
So basically, that was to mark the end of the plot. Like 9 Inch Nails with David Lynch's way of saying, "Okay, that's all the plot you're getting. Now we're gonna have like
that's the straightforward stuff. Now it's experimental film time.
Yeah." So if you were watching for the plot, you could just turn it off here. You're done.
So it goes to in the 1940s. The date actually lines up. I saw somebody had done the math there and figured out it is the date of the first nuclear bomb testing in New Mexico. And so that happens. A nuclear bomb goes off. You see it kind of off in the desert. And the camera's just kind of slowly moving towards the nuclear bomb for 7 minutes. It is a 7-minute scene of it slowly moving into a mushroom cloud. And then inside the mushroom cloud is just a bunch of like chaos and smoke and fire and other random stock imagery kind of. And then it gets to, as you said, you see this demon thing spitting up this long like tube of matter, including Bob and what appears to be some eggs. Like watching a second time, I saw some egg-looking things in there, which goes into something else that we see later on as a possibility. And then we see, after that, we go up from these waters. It cuts to this waters, and it's a pretty beautiful shot, actually, of these waters going up, and then up this cliffside, and to this old-looking building, and it's this, like, operatic-looking building. It looks like it's the same place, possibly, that we saw at the very beginning of the series, where we first saw the giant in, like, episode 1. So it's this black and white, it's in this, like, opera hall kind of looking place. The giant's there. He's watching the same nuclear explosion thing that we just saw.
He's watching, basically he's watching Bob being born.
Mm-hmm.
I guess there's a correlation, or I guess somebody made a correlation between the nuclear explosion and the birth of Bob. Like, maybe the nuclear bomb, like, kind of like maybe shattered whatever barriers were separating our world from the lodge, from the world of the other world of the lodge. And
I heard that same thing, and it actually kind of reminds me of Agent Carter with the where they had the bomb that created brought black matter or dark matter into.
Yeah,
you remember that?
I remember that. And so in a way, the nuclear explosion, I guess they're saying, like, was responsible for the birth of Bob and Bob's existence in the Twin Peaks world.
Mm-hmm. And so we see the giant watching this. He starts just, floating up into the sky as you do. And there's like this woman who kind of looks like an opera singer, like she's all like painted up and, like her hair's all done up crazy. And she's like walking up to the giant, and as the giant's in the air, this kind of like amber looking orb kind of comes out of him from like this energy that's coming out, and it comes to her, and she picks it up and looks at it.
The Bob orb, because the Bob orb is all black and gooey, and this is like an amber, like it's a direct parallel. It's a direct parallel to that. That much is obvious.
And we see Laura's face in it.
Yes,
Laura Palmer.
So if the black orb has Bob's face in it, and the golden orb has Laura Palmer's face in it, then I guess the assumption or the message, the takeaway from that is that Laura Palmer was supposed to be like was created by the White Lodge to encounter Bob in some way. So I guess it strengthens the connection between Laura Palmer and Bob in a deeper way than what we assumed was the connection, basically deeper than just killer and victim.
Part of the speculation I saw was that Laura was a trap for Bob.
Yeah.
That was brought out, like that they would know that Bob would be attracted to her and would seek her out, and then they could lure him into a trap. And Twin Peaks is supposed to be the location that's got the thinnest connection to the Black Lodge, I guess.
Oh, right.
In the woods there, and that's where Laura Palmer ended up, and so I think that's kind of what they might have been going for. It's all speculation. It's all like crazy experimental filmmaking.
Yeah. It's all speculation because this is all symbolic. This is heavily symbolic stuff. Like, you know.
Then the woman, she takes the orb and she puts it through this like funnel looking thing, and it shoots off the orb in through space towards Earth. Basically by aiming at the screen that the giant was watching the nuclear explosion on. And then we start getting to the kind of, where it's weird, but it's getting into like this like very horror kind of vibe. Because we see two kind of things approach the Earth. We see this kind of shadow kind of coming down from the sky and landing on Earth, and it takes the form of one of those woodsmen that we had seen smearing blood all over Bob. So they're somehow connected to Bob, I guess. And they start kind of stumbling out through the desert. By the way, it's like, it says it's like in the 1950s now, so some time's passed. It's not like right after.
So Vanity Fair write-up of the episode has this character named as the Woodsman, and he's played by Robert Brodsky, who is a known Abraham Lincoln impersonator. So if you really so if you thought this guy looked like a demonic Abraham Lincoln, well, that is why.
Yeah, he's appeared in a bunch of movies, usually playing Abraham Lincoln, and in a way he's still dressed up. He's still dressed up as that. He's made up to resemble Lincoln. He has the beard.
And stuff in the face. I don't know if that's on purpose on Lynch's part. If we're supposed to like draw that parallel as part of the iconography that Lynch is going for.
I don't know if it's that so much as just that he has a very old-timey look to him because of that.
Of that, right. But he is easily...
Because the woodsmen, they look like coal miners, basically.
They do. They look like
they're covered in charcoal.
Oh, they're covered in soup. Kind of like,
yeah,
you're right. Yeah.
If you see like old pictures of coal miners where they're just black and you see the cracks in the black, like where their wrinkles are and stuff on their face, and then their eyes and everything look really bright because they're so covered in soot, and they're like these really famous pictures. You see these old pictures. That's exactly what these people look like.
The woodsmen have been creepy all season, but this guy in particular instantly shoots up as to one of the creepiest villains ever put on film. Like this guy, yeah. I mean, it shows you how much David. This is the mastery of David Lynch right here. It shows you how much he could do with mood, with music. Just setting the tone, setting the scene. Because we know this character is evil. We know he's going to do bad things. That's obvious. But it's in the way that it's executed, the way that does it, the way he gets on that radio and he just repeats that line over and over and over again.
That's a little bit later. So when he first comes down, he first encounters like a couple in a car.
Oh, so he
approaches them and he leans over and says,
he's got a cigarette and he keeps asking, got a light?
And the other woodsmen start surrounding the car, and you see them kind of like the people in the car like screaming, and they drive out of there.
His very appearance to people inspires extreme terror. Like as soon as people look at him, they're paralyzed with fear. It's seemingly. And that's interesting.
And it just, the way he looks, the way he's lit and stuff even, it's very kind of haunting.
Again,
it's the black and white, it's the really harsh lighting, it's...
Again, David Lynch masterfully uses every tool of the medium to enhance the mood, to enhance the sense of dread, and to, you know, to really inspire that sense of terror in you that this character evokes. Like I said, it's well done, you know, when you talk about, like, horror, I think David Lynch is one of the masters of horror because he knows how to get under your skin.
He's from the same kind of horror school, or close to the same kind of horror school as you would say, like Cronenberg.
Yeah.
Cronenberg's similar in the way that they both get under your skin. They really unnerve you. Lynch is a little bit more kind of on the experimental and using a lot of like visual symbolism to kind of create that mood and that tone, whereas Cronenberg is very like evasive, like invasive of like, you know, things going into your skin and going into places that are like, you know, sensitive that you don't want to see, you know, like and viciously attacking those. That's kind of like Cronenberg's side of that. But they're both kind of in that, like, really uncomfortable area of horror. But yeah, at the same time that these guys come down and they're terrorizing this couple on the roadside, we see an egg, and the egg cracks open, and this creature comes out that looks like it's like half frog, half locust, kind of.
If you notice, and somebody pointed out, half frog, half locust, that's two biblical plagues in one creature.
Yeah. It has, like, the wings like the locust, and they buzz, and it kind of makes a similar sound, but it has like this back end like a frog, and it has like insect-like legs in the front too, and it kind of moves around like pathetically, like it's like dragging itself, like it's pushing with its legs through the sand and barely moving.
Again, it's very unsettling, it's very creepy because of the awkward way in which it moves, and just basically how unnatural it is to begin with, like it, you know, it existing, and again, you know, like, but this thing comes into play in a more creepy way later.
Yeah. But we see a couple. It's a young couple. They're like kids. They're kind of out, like, you know, and they part ways. There's really not too much purpose to the two of them showing up except for the girl who we see later. But what I think Lynch is doing there, and I saw it pointed out, is that it's kind of like a parody of like 1950s horror of like the young couple late at night, you know, and they discover something horrible kind of thing, like you'd see from like The Thing or The Blob, you know, or things like that, movies like that, you know. It's kind of like evoking a little bit of that in the scene with these two. They part ways, so nothing really eventful happens from it. The girl takes off, she goes home. This is when we see our coal miner looking friend, the woodsman, shows up at a radio station and starts kind of wreaking havoc. He crushes a woman's head, and then he goes into the radio room and grabs the head of the DJ. He turns off the record that's playing. He grabs the microphone and he starts repeating a phrase over and over again. And I have it written down here. It's, this is the water and this is the well. Drink full and ascend. The horse is the white of the eyes and dark within.
If you watch this is, you know, Twin Peaks. You know, there's a lot of iconography. There's a lot of things Twin Peaks popularized in pop culture relating to that. You know, the hand in the Black Lodge. You know, Cooper's
the horse
coffee,
that appears in the room. Yeah,
the Cooper's you know, damn fine cup of coffee. You know, and among all this, I think this is going to be part. You know, this is going to be what's remembered from this season. I truly believe those words get in your head, and
he's saying it over and over again.
He's saying it over and over again.
It's got this distortion on his voice that sounds like it kind of has like I don't know how to put this because it's not like it shows anything directly of it, but it kind of sounds like radioactive,
right?
If you know what I mean, like his voice.
if anything is remembered from this season of Twin Peaks, it's going to be the Woodsman. It's going to be the Woodsman here. This is iconic. I was witnessing witnessing the birth of just a new icon right here. I felt
there was a similar quote in the original series that I don't remember the whole quote, but it ended with "Firewalk with Me," and that's what became like the that was the name of the movie that was the prequel, was "Firewalk with Me," and I can't remember the full quote. Could you look that up while I'm talking? The "Firewalk with Me" quote from Twin Peaks.
Sure, yeah.
But it's similar in the way that it's kind of like almost like a riddle and a poem, and it's dark and it's symbolic. Again, what he's saying is, this is the water and this is the well. Drink full and ascend. The horse is the white of the eyes and dark within. And there's all these things we're going to be drawing from that, from symbolism we've already seen. Of course, the idea of the water and the well, drinking full and descending, it's kind of like being taken over by evil or something. And then you have the horse is a symbol we've seen. It showed up in the Palmer's house at one point, and Sarah Palmer just saw the horse like in the middle of her living room, that in one of the episodes.
Through the darkness of future past, the magician longs to see one chance out between two worlds. Firewalk with me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is like that for the new show, basically.
Yeah, this is basically, the Firewalk with Me poem. This is basically that.
So while this guy is repeating this thing over and over again, and he does it like 20 times, and it's unsettling, and he keeps saying it over and over again, we start to see people that are listening to this radio broadcast. And they're not acting like it's weird or anything. They're just sitting there listening like, doo-doo-doo, like it's an everyday thing. There's the girl from that couple that we had seen earlier. She's up sitting on her bed. There's a man, I think he's like at a gas pump or like outside of a store. And there's a woman at a diner who's like working in the diner, and nobody's there, but it's got like one of those U-shaped counters, and she's standing behind it.
Mm-hmm.
As he keeps repeating this, we see the woman behind the counter at the diner just passes out, just collapses on the ground.
Apparently, the Woodsman's poem, or whatever he's chanting, causes everybody listening to it to pass out, including the girl we saw with her boyfriend earlier. And
we don't really see the man passing out, I don't think.
I think you do.
But we do see and the girl doesn't like flat pass out like that woman does.
She falls
she just
asleep.
She just kind of lays down. Sleep.
But I think the implication was because it causes everybody to pass out, which is the simplest way to put it. And while she's sleeping, we see the locust frog from earlier.
The girl from the couple.
And it crawls into her mouth and sort of crawls inside her, and it's gross and freaky and nightmare fuel.
Yeah, down to like after it's crawled into her mouth, it's got the one leg kind of hanging out, kind of twitching and slowly pulling itself in. It's just the way the whole thing is done. Credits roll and in black, and then it cuts back in while the credits are still rolling and just shows her still sleeping there.
Yeah, and that's it. That's Twin Peaks this week. That was it. Yeah.
Creepy as hell. Like you said, you were leaning towards the hating it side. Was that at the beginning when the really creepy stuff started happening? Did you start to like it at that point?
You know what? Actually, with the taking into account creepy stuff at the end, I actually did enjoy this episode.
Yeah, I definitely did.
It gave us one of the best things this season, which is the Woodsman, so I can't hate.
Even when it was ridiculous, and it's like, seriously? Like, I was saying out loud, seriously, and like laughing.
Yeah.
Like, I was, even when it was ridiculous, I was enjoying that it was ridiculous,
Right,
like, I was
exactly.
Like, really? You're just gonna focus on this old, like, gas station with, like, the windows flickering light and, like, people, like, showing up and appearing, like, for...
In a lot of points it was difficult to watch. I actually watched this in two parts. I watched 30 minutes of it, and then I had to take, like, a long break, and then come back to it, like, hours later, just to finish the other 30 minutes.
You had to go back, come back with, ice cream with sprinkles.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just, oh god, such a weird, symbolic episode. I kind of love it. Like, looking back, it's, like I said, even the parts that were ridiculous, like, I found humor in the fact that they were so ridiculous, And then, as it started getting creepy and everything that had been building up had started to kind of take root in this, like, and it affects your emotions and the pacing, that's an important thing. Like, I recently got on a debate on a forum I post on about American Gods, and people were talking about how Brian Fuller does, takes too much time dwindling in his pacing and showing these kind of like slow motion shots of water droplets and everything like that. And my argument was that it's about tone. It's about establishing tone. And you can't just do that simply. You can't just tell people how they're supposed to feel. You can't just like put people into a mood or into kind of like a trance-like state by telling them that's what you need to do. You have to kind of build that. And I brought up this episode of Twin Peaks saying, like, if you didn't like American Gods, stay well clear of this episode of Twin Peaks. Because if you thought, like, looking at a few raindrops for a few extra seconds was hard in American Gods, wait till you have to stare at a nuclear explosion for 7 minutes straight.
Yeah, exactly.
But I kind of love all of that. Like, I enjoy that pacing. Like, it didn't even bother me last week with the sweeping scene.
Just watching a guy, you were like, I could watch this guy sweep butts all day.
I was laughing as he was doing that because it was so preposterous and ridiculous
that they held on that for so long.
Even though that's so ridiculous and they hold on for it so long, the fact that they do hold on for that so long creates like a unique opportunity when something actually does happen.
It does, yeah.
He's controlling the pace. He's like, it's kind of like if I walked up to you and I started like mimicking a heartbeat by like tapping my thumb on your arm at like a heartbeat. Mm-hmm. Your heart would almost kind of start, like, subconsciously you would start going into that rhythm. And it might unnerve you because you're not, going in your natural, I'm like forcing you into my pace. And that's kind of what David Lynch does.
He forces you into his pace.
Exactly. And that takes time. You can't just do it, like you don't, that's why you don't see stuff like that. You don't kind of get that kind of same disturbing emotional response in a lot of like modern day stuff like you would watching a David Lynch movie. It's because David Lynch will do that. David Lynch will take 20 minutes to lure you into his pace, like nobody else does that.
Right.
So he can do that and then he can get that effective result from you. Now, whether or not you think that effective result is worth like sitting through a long ass scene like that, that's up to you, But what I'm trying to say is that it does have a purpose. It's about establishing tone and creating a pacing that you're locked into. It's taking you out of your own pacing and drawing you into his. And that's important to the kind of storytelling that David Lynch does. Because David Lynch's storytelling isn't about plot. It's all about emotion.
Right.
It's all about like what you feel. Like what a character says doesn't really matter. It's the cadence of what they say. Yeah.
Yeah. Plot is secondary. It's almost as if David Lynch isn't even concerned about the plot.
Yeah. Like it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. All that matters is what you're feeling in that moment.
Right, exactly.
It's kind of like classical music. Classical music will build up and then it has, and there's no words to tell you the story. It's all in the structure of the writing. And that's kind of like how David Lynch sees it. He has dialogue and stuff, but none of it really matters. I mean, the cadence of the dialogue, the way it's spoken is more important than the dialogue itself.
Right, exactly. And that's why when people complain about bad acting or the actors being flat or something, they purposefully being flat because that's the cadence that he's building with that,
Mm-hmm.
The acting's stiff because that's the rhythm he's going with. That's what he. And
I know some people would hear that and they'd think like, "Oh, we're just being apologists for that."
No, it's meant to evoke a feeling,
It might not be worth it for you. You might go through and go like, "Well, that's not worth it." Well, then it's not for you.
But it's not
but
bad.
That doesn't make it bad.
It's done for a purpose, not done out of incompetence or hackery.
Mm-hmm.
He has a very specific purpose for why it's done that way.
Mm-hmm. Not everybody everybody is going to like everything. Not everything's going to be for everybody. If you allow yourself to be taken in by that pacing, you're going to get a payoff for that. And some people will say, well, that payoff isn't worth it to sit through a bunch of what they consider to be garbage to get through it to that point.
And that's fair.
That's fair, you know, but that just means it's not for you. And I think that's an important thing for people to pay attention to when they talk about things like Twin Peaks, is that it's not for everybody. And just because it's not for you doesn't mean like, oh, it's, you know, it's jumped the shark, it's gone off the rails, you know?
Yeah.
No, it's doing Lynch. It's becoming like more and more like a David Lynch property. And if you don't like that, then that's too bad, you know?
Yeah,
like, I guess you're not going to enjoy it, but
well.
that doesn't mean it's not good. So yeah, that's Twin Peaks. We were able to actually get a lot of discussion out of that. We were kind of worried after we watched it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how are we going to talk about 50 minutes of experimental filmmaking and 10 minutes of plot?
I was just kind of, I guess it was like such a whammy that it took time to kind of wrap my head around what I just saw.
Yeah, definitely. And there's a lot of also where you're going to see people reading way too far into it, and you're going to see people not reading far enough into it, and you're going to see people drawing different conclusions. I've already seen a lot of people saying that frog insect thing is Bob, and that's like how Bob comes to be, getting pressed into that girl. Other people are saying no, that those woodsmen are like the agents of Bob, and that frog insect thing is what was sent, like it's Laura, and that Laura is entering that girl, and that girl, maybe that girl ends up giving birth to Sarah, Laura's mother, and the dates kind of line up. Like that's around, you know, like you go a few years after that, and that girl, she's old enough to give birth, and Sarah Palmer, who becomes Sarah Palmer, Laura's mother, could be born from that moment. It could also be Ray Palmer, you know?
Yeah, you don't know.
There's lots of things it could be. It could somehow be connected to Cooper, for all we know. It could be something completely different. We just don't know, but there's going to be a lot of speculation about that, and that's cool. I like that. So I'm looking forward to seeing what comes next, but we're not going to see it for another week. As we said, Twin Peaks isn't going to be on because of 4th of July weekend. In its place, we will be discussing Kimmy Schmidt.
Yeah.
Which just had its third season up on Netflix recently. So we're going to be going into the full talk about that. So if you don't want to watch that, then just don't tune in next week, because that's pretty much all we're going to be talking about, unless some like crazy news drops.
Yeah, exactly.
But now I'm going to talk about what's coming up in the week ahead, what new shows are coming up. On Friday, June 30th, that's today by the time this podcast is available, Killjoys is coming back to SyFy. That pairs with Dark Matter, as usual. So those two usually go side by side with each other. It's SyFy's Lovable Rogue space block.
Right.
Gypsy is a new series coming to Netflix. It's a drama about a therapist who gets kind of too involved in her patients' lives. Snowfall is hitting FX on July 5th. That's about the birth of crack cocaine in Los Angeles, I believe. It has to do with crack and the drug business and where that came from. It's from John Singleton, is actually created this series on FX. And then on Friday, July 7th, next week, Castlevania comes to Netflix. So, as you could probably guess, we're probably going to be talking about Castlevania alongside Twin Peaks in 2 weeks.
Right. Yeah, probably.
But Castlevania is going to be hitting Netflix on Friday, July 7th, 2017. It is like an R-rated Castlevania. The creators of the show are saying they're doing like a Game of Thrones like take on it. It's based on Castlevania 3, is it?
Yes, Castlevania 3. Yep, Castlevania 3 Dracula's Curse is what's based off of. So this is Trevor Belmont, Sylvia Belnades, and Alucard.
Yep, and Dracula, of course, appears in all things Castlevania.
Well, yeah.
So he'll be in this as well. He's actually being played by, I'd mentioned Preacher earlier, the guy who plays the Saint of All Killers is the guy doing the voice for Dracula in Castlevania. And Gaius Baltar from Battlestar Galactica is doing the voice for Alucard. are. So some cool stuff with that. But that's it for our podcast. So you can follow me on Twitter. I'm at Tyson Gifford. You can follow Will on Twitter. He is at Voxel Hero. Check out our Facebook page and our YouTube channel, as well as our site, TVEnthusiast.com. You can subscribe to the podcast through any major podcast client like iTunes or Pocket Cast. And the entire backlog of our podcast is available on our YouTube channel. So until next week, when we dive deep into the dark and disturbing Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt. Good night.
Good night.
If you would like to voice your opinion, send an email to theweeklyset@TVEnthusiast.com. TV Enthusiast is a part of the Enthusiast Media Network. Stay tuned to TV Enthusiast and the Weekly Set podcast for more coverage